Channel 4 News. Jon Snow's life's work, his vocation, was to get to the truth of every story, to inform us all about how the world works, for good and bad. I just want to tell the truth and see where it takes us, he once explained. Well, for some time now, Jon has been dealing with a difficult truth of his own, and today it has been revealed that he is living with Alzheimer's. In a frank and at times painful interview in the Daily Mail, Jon, with his wife Precious, talks about coming to terms with the diagnosis he initially tried to ignore. But now he has decided to return to that lifelong love of storytelling, this time his own story, but as always in the hope of informing others. In a documentary to be aired on June the 20th called A Last Big Story, Jon and his wife talk about why Alzheimer's isn't the end of life, but a different way of living it.
So many crimes were committed in the name of apartheid. What should happen to people who committed those crimes?
I have been saying...
Every big story for more than 4 decades, Jon was at the heart of them all.
Do you know anybody here who has died or who is missing?
A lot.
A lot.
Often telling the side others missed or ignored. Putting unheard voices on air was a lifelong calling throughout his career, 3 decades of which he spent as main presenter of this programme.
I see myself as an informant. That's my job, tell the truth, see where it takes us. If, as widely expected, Boris Johnson inherits the keys to number 10...
His commitment to honesty and openness, a motivating force, which has inspired him now to tell a very personal story, how he's been living with Alzheimer's. He told the Daily Mail, "If I don't speak out, who will? At the beginning, I wanted to hide it. There's so much prejudice, any sort of hint of mental decay, you're sort of dead. There are moments when it pops up, but it's not an all-day, everyday condition, and that's what I cling on to." In a new documentary called A Last Big Story, due to be aired here on Channel 4 in just over 2 weeks' time, Jon goes back to work, investigating an environmental disaster in Africa. But he also talks openly about the diagnosis he was given in 2023, 2 years after retiring from Channel 4 News.
We're on the cusp of one of the greatest sporting, cultural, commercial, yet human events any of us will ever witness in this city in our lifetime.
His wife Precious told the Daily Mail he'd loved working again. He literally lit up when he started doing it and began acting like the old Jon. Alzheimer's disease takes your confidence away, and it was lovely watching him flower again. We know if the brain is stimulated, it can slow down the disease. Raising awareness of the condition he's lived with for 3 years, one of this country's biggest killers, is now the story Jon's pursuing with his trademark determination. Well, a short time ago, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, described Jon as a true giant in journalism and said that by sharing his diagnosis, he was helping others feel less alone. Well, I'm joined now by Kirsty Lang, who has known Jon for 4 decades. She was a long-time colleague of Jon's here at Channel 4 News and interviewed him for that article in the Daily Mail. Kirsty, it is beautifully done, but a difficult story to write and a difficult story to read. It is sad in places. What made him decide to speak out in the end, do you think?
I think 2 things. I think he was becoming increasingly aware that it was noticeable to other people. He's an incredibly popular broadcaster who, is constantly approached in the street by strangers and so on. And so I think the pressure of keeping it under wraps, keeping it secret was difficult. But also, genuinely, he wants to help other people. And knowing from that getting an early diagnosis, getting on a drugs trial, as he did, because there are quite a lot of drugs coming online now, and that has slowed the pace of the disease, and he wanted to get the word out there. He's involved in a campaign with the Alzheimer's Society. So, being Jon, he's incredibly empathetic, and in a way, this is, one of his last big stories.
Couldn't be a better ambassador, but he has struggled with coming to terms with it, hasn't he, in the beginning?
It was really, really hard because Jon loves working. He loves being a journalist. He loves getting out there and investigating stories. And he was genuinely frightened, I think, that people would write him off and that he wouldn't be able to broadcast anymore. And I think it is, it is a difficult diagnosis to come to terms with. So, yeah, it was a big struggle. And I think, you need time as a family to adjust to it before you go public. I mean, it took quite a long time to tell his friends, to be honest. I mean, we were all sort of a bit like, is Jon getting a bit forgetful or whatever, but we weren't quite sure.
I mean, his wife, Precious, in the piece is quite honest, isn't she, that she lied to friends. I said, they phoned to check in and they said, oh, yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, she did. And I think that put huge pressure on her because Jon was saying, please don't tell anyone, please don't tell anyone. And she had to respect that. But yeah, there was quite a long period when his close friends, like myself, were sort of ringing up him or Precious going, is everything all right? Doesn't seem quite himself. And they were like, no, absolutely, it's all fine. Well, it clearly wasn't.
And one of the things that comes across very strongly in the piece is the pressure that it puts on families.
Yeah.
It's a terrible disease that doesn't affect just the person who has it.
There is that. And, there are good days and bad days. I mean, I have to say that there's this fantastic documentary coming out on Channel 4 on the 20th of June. And I urge people to watch it because you will see Jon in Zambia investigating an environmental disaster, which I think he broke here on Channel 4 News. And speaking to the producer, Ben de Pere, who used to be editor of this programme, he said that during those 2 weeks that he spent with Jon, there were days when he just felt perfectly normal because he was getting the stimulation. And I think this is a really important message to get out about Alzheimer's. Do not write people off. If they get the right stimulation, find the right thing, which in Jon's case was getting another story, it does stimulate the brain and slow down the disease. So that's quite important.
And going back to work for him for that brief period, I mean, Precious describes him as utterly changed.
Absolutely, yeah. You could actually, it was literally like watching, when I've seen the documentary a couple of times and I watched it in the cutting room and so on. It's like you see a light bulb coming on. I should also stress with Alzheimer's, Jon's pretty typical like this. He has good days and bad days. Some days he's kind of like, almost like the old Jon.
And you described the Jon that we all know really well. He jumps up, my dear girl, lovely to see you, all the bright coloured clothes, the mad socks.
Yeah. No.
And that still remains.
Yeah. And then suddenly he'll ask you a question, where you'll realise, like asking me, I don't know, what I'm up to, when I just told him what I'm up to, you realise that there's something wrong. But yeah, as I say, there are good days and bad.
And it's interesting that Precious, his wife, says he wanted the documentary to give the community a voice, but also to restore faith in himself.
He did. I think that's right. And actually, I've just come off the phone with his wife, and she says that Jon is immensely relieved, actually, now that the news is out, that he can talk openly about it, but also that he can, spread the word to other Alzheimer's sufferers out there and say, you're not alone, there are things that can be done, don't give up, and make families, because it's so difficult on families. And I know that for myself, because my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's, and it's really, really tough.
Well, there will be so much love going out to him and his family tonight. Kirsty, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, joining me now is Dr. Richard Oakley, the Associate Director of Research and Innovation at the Alzheimer's Society. Dr. Oakley, how important is it for someone as well known as Jon Snow to be coming out and saying, I have Alzheimer's, I'm living with Alzheimer's?
Yeah, good evening. It's incredibly important. I mean, first to recognise the bravery that Jon and Precious have shown in coming out. And dementia is the UK's biggest killer, but not often enough is it talked about and is it phrased. And there's not enough urgency around dementia like there are in other conditions such as cancer. So it's so important that Jon tells his story and starts a national conversation about dementia and the fact that if you do get an early and accurate diagnosis and get the right care and support, you can live a good quality of life. And that's exactly what you've just been hearing about now.
And as we've been saying, both he and Precious are pretty honest about his reluctance at the beginning. First to face it, he was reluctant to go to the doctor. He was reluctant to accept the diagnosis. How common is that?
Yeah, it's very common. There's a huge amount of stigma still with dementia, but we have seen that in other conditions like cancer in the 80s and the 90s when it was called the Big C. And what you need is bravery from people such that, as Jon is showing today, coming forward and telling people about the story and showing that with the right care and support, you can continue to live a really good quality of life. And we also want to make sure that people get access to that support. And that's why at the Alzheimer's Society, we have a support line that people can call on our website, alzheimers.org.uk. You can go and get access to information that can help you. We have access to a symptom checklist where people can look at what symptoms they've got and have a good conversation with their GP in order to get that early and accurate diagnosis to ensure that you can live that best quality of life. And so through that, we hope we can break down the stigma of dementia.
And the piece speaks to the importance of early diagnosis, but Jon also talks about how he thought at the beginning, oh, it's just because I'm getting a bit older. And so the message must go out, surely, that there's a distinction between what happens as we get older and early signs of Alzheimer's, presumably. How do people make that distinction?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that this story is so important to say, that it is not a natural part of ageing, it is a disease. And in fact, dementia is the biggest killer in the UK. And that's why the national conversation talking about that is so important, that when people are hesitant to get that diagnosis and they then don't get access to the care and support they need. In fact, a third of people in the UK never even get a diagnosis of their dementia. And that is so important. And like I say, we want to see dementia treated with the same urgency as cancer. And actually, on our website at the moment, we have an open letter calling for the government's dementia plan that they're currently writing to be bold and to be ambitious, because that is the least that people affected by dementia deserve.
Dr. Richard Oakley, thank you so much for talking to us. Thank you.